I promised you last week we'd talk a little bit about guilt, that emotion that so many people struggle with. So I want to share a little bit about these two types of guilt that I categorize that emotion into. One is the kind of guilt that makes sense, right? That we have done something wrong, or we've done something that we feel goes against our morals, our ethics. Really, there's experience of not wanting to ever do that thing again. And so when we feel guilt from that, the emotion makes sense, right? We want to not do that thing again. So feeling that kind of icky guilt feeling, it's helpful, right? Because we will change our behaviors in the future. So guilt in its healthy, natural form comes from when we are at fault, right? There's some kind of blameworthiness in the experience. In other words, we intended harm and we then executed the harm, or we intended the outcome of the harm that was occurring. The other type of guilt is inappropriate guilt, right? So that's the term that I've come up with to help explain this guilt that people feel that just kind of washes over them at odd times, right? They say no to a friend who says, "Can you pick my kids up from school?" And it just really would wreak havoc on their life and there's no way they can make it work. And they say, "No, I really can't help with that on Tuesday." And yet they feel this huge wash of guilt, right? And there isn't a right or wrong answer to, can I pick your kids up from school on Tuesday? And yet we feel guilt as if we've done something wrong, right? And so this is where our inappropriate guilt can come in. The guilt that comes up when we haven't actually done something that's against our morals, against our ethics, or that we would consider wrong. I don't like to categorize things necessarily into black and white, right and wrong. There's a time and place for that, obviously, but there's very few times where it's very black and white like that. But what we see so often is that people can walk around having guilt wash over them on a regular basis, daily, weekly, right? And it's not necessarily matching what they've gone through. They feel guilty for saying no. They feel guilty for setting a boundary. They feel guilty for mind reading and imagining that they're letting someone down. They don't even know if they've let the person down, but they are imagining that they've let them down. And so they'll feel guilt, right? And so these are areas where I would consider inappropriate guilt, because we don't actually know that we've done something that's hurt someone else. We definitely haven't intended that to be the outcome, right? So we might have played a role in the event, like I did have to say no to my friend picking up her kids, but I didn't intend the outcome of them feeling sad or making their life harder, right? And so there might be a feeling of like regret. That would be an appropriate emotion. Like, I regret that I can't help my friend because I care about them and they help me on occasion. But guilt doesn't really make sense, right? So if guilt washes over you, you can label it as inappropriate guilt and just kind of like sit with it, or see if there's an emotion that fits better, like regret, right? It may be the regret isn't even the right one. Maybe it's not your responsibility to pick up their kids. Maybe you barely know this person, and just what they're asking is a little too much. In that case, you're not responsible. You're not playing a role in the event. You're just setting a healthy boundary, right? You might feel sad that you can't help out. You'd love to be able to help everyone, and that might be a more appropriate feeling. But even regret or guilt, not appropriate. They're not the correct emotion in this case. And so I find if we can take a moment each time we feel guilt wash over us and just ask ourselves, is this appropriate guilt or inappropriate guilt? That simple moment of asking that can be so powerful, because if it's appropriate guilt, good, I want to feel bad, right? If I punch my friend in the face because I was angry at them and I meant to punch them, I want to feel guilt. I want to feel really, really bad. I want to apologize, make reparations, never do that again, right? I want to feel that guilt because that is against my morals and ethics. It's against who I am. I don't do that sort of thing. So I would want to feel guilt. But if I'm feeling guilt over everyday things, saying no to things, not getting to something that, when I had a long day, I feel guilty because I forgot to put the favorite snack in my kid's lunchbox, right? When we start feeling guilt all day long about small things, then we need to ask ourselves, is this guilt appropriate? Or is this go into the inappropriate guilt category? Can I let this go? Can I start recognizing that there's maybe other emotions that fit better? Regret, sadness, even grief we've talked about in my last video. Like if someone passes away and we wish you had spent more time with them, right? We feel guilty, but really the appropriate emotion might be grief, right? Sadness, or even regret. And so really taking a look at what other emotions, as you increase your emotional vocabulary, might be more appropriate to this guilt feeling that's washing over you. And then you can start to see this guilt, the inappropriate guilt, as a habit rather than a fact, right? Noticing when it washes over me, maybe that's just my habit. Each time something goes wrong, each time I start to worry that I'm making a mistake, or I'm letting someone down, or I'm setting a boundary, I feel guilt because it's my habit. It's not fact. And if I really look at it and examine it, I'll start to see that it's inappropriate guilt. And there's other emotions that make more sense. And I can sit with the wash of guilt. I can sit with that emotion as it pops up, take a deep breath and let it kind of wash back out, almost like a wave coming in and a wave coming out, right? Knowing it won't last forever, knowing I can let it wash over me and then wash back out. And I don't have to hold on to it because it's not accurate. I don't have to buy into it. It's not accurate. I can let go of that guilt. So I really hope you'll think about this, because I see so many people come into my practice just saying guilt consumes me. I walk around each day unhappy because there's so much guilt in my life. And sometimes it's over something that we do want to make reparations for, or apologize for. But more often than not, it's a habit that people have gotten into, maybe even from childhood. Who knows? It's been there for a long time. I'm a certified trauma counselor, so I see a lot with people with a history of trauma. Anyway, I want you to think about that. I'm Dr. Kristen Kopez. I'm a clinical psychologist practicing in the state of California. If you have questions, feel free to message me. I am available on my website, drkinthebay.com. You can also find me on YouTube if you subscribe to this channel. Take care.